Welcome to Adoption Now, the podcast that brings real, powerful stories of adoption to life. Whether you're here to share your journey, learn from others, or be a part of a growing community, you are in the right place. Join us as we explore the heart, challenges, and beauty of adoption. And now, here's another inspiring episode.
At the end of the day, I choose you.
Hi, welcome to Adoption Now. We're your hosts, Noah and April. We are super excited to be on video. So if you guys are listening right now, you can go to YouTube and actually watch this whole thing on video, and you're going to see our faces, and it's a little bit different setup for us. So we are trying to make it also audio and video, and so our intro is different, and we're super excited to be here. Noah, thank you for joining the show.
I'm so excited to be here.
So if you don't know about Adoption Now, we are a show about telling stories that have to do with the adoptive parents, the biological parents, and adoptees. We believe in telling the story of the whole triad so that you can potentially adopt the whole story, understand, and grow more about adoption. And we're excited because we are in season 8 and it's National Adoption Month. Like, this is our month. This is our month to celebrate. It's our month to actually also walk through a lot of different emotions for people. Not everybody is super thrilled. A lot of people who are finalizing on their children, but this can be a really hard month for people.
Yeah, it really can. I mean, we're in season 8. It's our number.
It is our number.
We have all this excitement around it. But then as you're listening to stories and as you're getting more people that come onto the show, you realize there's so many different emotions that do come up. And your favorite thing to say is it's the dichotomy, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the joy and the challenges. And so I'm just excited to be kind of back involved again and sitting here listening. I haven't heard this story yet. So
no, you haven't. I was telling you a little bit about it while we were driving here, and you're like, what? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop telling you so you have real reaction from Noah. But we're also excited because we started a Patreon page. A lot of you always ask us, how can we support? And your donations are so important. Your donations are what keep our show going. But we just started a Patreon page so that you can give per month and also be a part of a community. We release our episodes early there. You're going to get Adoption Now swag, and it's just a fun place to be with like-minded people.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for you to really, like April said, to donate, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. And anything that you receive outside of the swag is fully tax deductible. So we would love to have you join Patreon. Do you have that website?
It's patreon.com
//adoption now.
We didn't even plan that out. Well, it kind of looked like we didn't. But hey, I want to talk to you about a memory that I had this morning, Noah, and just thinking about adoption earlier than 2010, right? I guess because we started the process in 2010. But when we tell stories before that, it seems like a night and day process. And I was thinking about our profile book.
Yes.
And how, first of all, it was like we were doing a craft. We went to Walmart and got our pictures developed, and then we cut them out like old school scrapbooking.
Glue sticks,
and made this profile book and turned it into our agency. So now it's all digital. You would never do that.
No.
And I don't even know how that would work. They had to hand the book to a birth mom to show her, right? She couldn't go online. So our only option was to adopt from the state we were in. And once we adopted, they kept our book. Even though birth mom had closed the adoption, they kept the book just in case she wanted it. So we never saw the book again. And then we went on to adopt 6 more times, and we never redid a book.
Nope. I don't even know how they would have shown that book again, right? Did the birth mom keep the book? I don't know. It's so different, though.
We would have probably had to do another one, but they didn't ask that. And so you're probably like, well, how did you match? They literally just had to send one picture of our family.
Yes.
So we were just sending out a picture, and they're like, this is great. We'll show it to her. And there was no book. So most of our birth moms didn't even know our family, what we were doing. In fact, we had one birth mom say, I thought this was a commercial ad.
Yeah.
I didn't even think this was a real picture. I thought he was just sending me a fake family. I was like, is that a compliment?
I think it is.
Is that good?
Yeah.
But just to tell you, adoption has changed. So that's 2010. Granted, our agency was way behind, still using typewriters. We tell that story all the time. But It has come so far. And I noticed it in the last couple interviews that I've been doing, pre-interviews, just talking about the way families were chosen and the new ideas that were coming into play. And in this story, you're going to see that a lot. We're super excited. We have a birth mom from Florida. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Jessica, we're so excited and honored that you are here to share your story. And I just fell in love with you in the first 5 seconds I talked to you with your adoptive mother, the mother that you chose for your daughter. We are going to have her on the show later, but we're going to interview Jessica first. So the thing that really compelled me about your story was, first of all, the family that you chose. You did not know this, but they got married later in life, and they started the adoption process, but then they heard about embryo adoption. Now, this is 2003, 2004. It was cutting edge stuff talking about embryo adoption. They end up getting pregnant, but they don't pull their profile.
Wait, they didn't tell the agency?
They didn't tell the agency.
Oh my gosh.
And somewhere in there, you got a profile of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start the story there. This is 2008?
Yes.
Okay.
2008.
So let's start about your life there.
Sure. Yeah, I knew I was proceeding with the adoption process. By the time I found Connie and Matt's profile, I had already been browsing, and it took months before I found their profile, and we had a discussion, and then I officially chose them. And the discussion was the phone call that the adoption network had set up, where they just connected me with them. And they told me on that phone call that they had done that process and that she was pregnant. So we were pregnant at the same time. And I remember just feeling whoa, I had never heard of that.
Right. Well, she said, they said to you, we want to let you know she's pregnant with an adopted child. What? Did your head just explode?
It did, yeah. And she was like, it's like an adopted, egg and sperm that it was donated by other people. I'm not biologically related to this child at all, but I'm carrying like her. And I was just completely blown away. Science.
Right. You're like, okay, sounds good. But you still wanted them to be the parents.
I really hit it off pretty immediate with them on the call. Just very easy to talk to. It didn't feel forced or awkward in any way. And I feel like that piece was so important, that connection. And just to have that immediately was wonderful. And so I was actually kind of surprised when they were like, even though I am carrying, we are still interested in adoption, and had mentioned raising the girls as twins because their birthdays would be so close. And I just loved that concept. So we proceeded.
I can't even believe that you were pregnant at the same time. So adoptive mom is adopting a baby that she's carrying, and now she's matched to a birth mom that's pregnant, and they were going to be about 10 weeks apart.
I'm amazed that you just continued to go through.
Yeah, I am too.
That's pretty amazing.
I think it's the connection, right? I mean, that was it. It was like you knew that this was meant to be, sort of, in the relationship with her.
It did feel like that. I experienced a lot of difficulties in the process of browsing profiles, letting people know that, I was interested. I just couldn't get matched for some reason. And I remember the caseworker I had with the adoption network said she's never had this problem before. I don't know why. I was so difficult for her to place, I guess. So when we made that connection, it was wonderful. I felt like it was meant to be.
Okay, I can't even wrap my head around that with 1.2 million families waiting for a baby that you were having a hard time being matched. Let's talk a little bit about how you got to the place you were. So you were married and had 2 children. Let's start there.
So I was not married before. I
Okay.
was engaged.
Okay.
I was engaged to, so I have 2 boys from a previous relationship. We were supposed to get married. It didn't work out. He left when my younger son was 3 months old. And so I was a single mom, and I had 2 children that were in diapers. And then I, was dating this guy, and we got pregnant, and he didn't want another child. He had a daughter from a previous relationship as well. And so he wasn't really thrilled about the idea. We did not get a lot of time together to discuss a lot of options or choices or how we wanted to proceed with that. Unfortunately, he was arrested. He did go to prison. And I was not able to communicate with him. And so I kind of found myself, I was 21 at the time. So I'm 21 years old. I was in school at the time. I was trying to kind of get back on my feet from the previous relationship that didn't work out and left me kind of in a tough place.
Talk about how you took the test and then they said to you, oh my gosh, you're smart.
Oh, yeah. So, right. So, yes. Because I was a single mom with 2 children and I was, struggling to figure out life, I needed to be on the state assistance. I was on welfare and food stamps. And part of that program involves either community service or furthering your education. And I started with community service, and my caseworker gave me what's called a TABE test, which is basically kind of measures where you fall in, different categories, just like school, math, English, science, all the things. And I basically got 100%. And she looked at me and was just like, oh, you're really smart. We need to get you in school. And so I was just like, yeah, I'd much rather do that.
Yeah. And so that was like a big opportunity for you. You're like, okay, I left this guy. I have 2 small kids and I can do this. I can go back to school and I can do this.
Yeah. So I was in school during that time frame where I found myself pregnant again. And I was sort of in between, like towards the end of the pregnancy, the timing was like right in between finishing the schoolwork and then the required externship for the program. I was doing a pharmacy program at a technical school. And so I made the decision to kind of put school on hold until after the baby was born and the adoption process was completed, and then I was going to finish my externship, and that was essentially what occurred.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. So you find out you're pregnant and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to rebuild my life. And why did you even consider adoption? I mean, obviously you want to go on, but was your family around? I mean, who was helping you make these big decisions?
Sure. I lived at the time with my aunt and my uncle and my grandmother. They were kind of just letting me, I paid rent. I paid I was renting a room basically in their house for me and the boys while I was trying to save up so that I could move out and be independent. And my aunt and uncle did not have any children. So, and for me growing up, they were kind of always like a second set of parents, I guess, for me. They've always been very supportive. So that was a suggestion that my aunt had made, if I would consider it. And I did. I kind of just looked at my life and didn't think that where I was, that I would be able to reach my goals as a single mother with 3 babies. Mm-hmm. I was already very overwhelmed. And I was very young. I was still trying to figure out my life. Mm-hmm. And the idea of just being one with three. I was in a grocery store once when I was pregnant, and I had both the boys with me in a shopping cart, and I'll never forget it. This woman looked at me and was just like, "Oh my God, you poor thing." And I remember I was just like, I almost broke down and cried at the store. I was like, "You have no idea."
I am a poor thing. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it was really hard. It's so long ago now, like thinking about it, tapping into the memories, it's a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate you going back in time because it really does help us understand how people make the decisions that they do, the very, very hard decisions. Now, I want to know if anyone in your family was willing to say, wait, don't do this. We'll take the baby.
I did have another aunt who wanted to adopt the baby. And I almost just immediately said yes, because I was just like, you're close to me, and that would give me an opportunity to be right there. And then the more I thought about it, I felt that I knew in my heart that when I got to the place that I was trying to get to, where I was more independent, that I may have, I don't want to say resentment, but like just like this part of me that would look at her and say, I made it. I can do it now. Give her back.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that to my aunt.
Right.
And so I just ultimately I decided that wasn't a route that I could go. I felt like it was just too close.
Okay, so you're with your aunt and uncle, the other aunt and uncle. The other aunt wants to adopt.
Yes.
And what are your parents saying? Did you have any contact with them?
So I was raised by my father, who was adopted.
Oh.
And my mom actually passed away when I was 4. So I was raised by my dad.
And how did he feel about your choice for adoption?
Not great at all. Only, I think it was the concept of an open adoption for him was foreign. His adoption was closed, and I could see it growing up. There were times it was very obvious. There was a lot of pain and sadness, and we've had a couple conversations about it where he just expressed those feelings of, why didn't she want me? Why did my family adopt me? Because he had kind of a rough childhood.
Did that scare you? Like, oh, what if I place and my child has a rough childhood?
That's why the open piece was so important to me. I felt like that option would allow me to still be present, so there wouldn't be an unknown, I guess.
Yep.
So in my process of thinking, I was just like, it's a totally different scenario.
Yep. It's going to be totally different. It's going to be better. I just thought of a book idea. You have inspired me. And you know what? You wanted me to introduce you as a future best-selling author. And you are going to be, if you write this story, you are going to be a best-selling author because you are great at telling your story and being just so open and vulnerable. But I have noticed in adoption that there's kind of 3 phases of the adoption journey when you're talking about eras. And I feel like your dad was in that closed adoption era, right? Where adoptees are now coming out and saying, I wasn't allowed to talk about it. My adoption was closed. I didn't know anything about anything. And I was frustrated. And then there's this part where when Connie comes on, you're going to see where it was like things were starting to change, but they weren't changing all together. And like open adoption was like cutting edge and embryo adoption was cutting it, right? And then there's that phase. And then there's the phase that we're in right now where it's like 100% open adoption. We're talking about it. Things are changing. And I have learned when I approach adoption with any conversation, I have to find out what era they're in before I talk, because I'm in this other era and I'm excited about things, right? I'm excited about open adoption, and I'll say something and they'll be like, yeah, it wasn't like that for me. Or they feel upset or they feel angry or they feel bitter. And I am like, oh my gosh, I just came in here with a lot of joy. And I need to back that up and talk to them and see where they're at in their journey, whether it's a birth mom, adoptee, an adoptive parent. You got to find out what teaching they had, what understanding, what experience they had before you just bring in how you feel about adoption. And I think that has helped me a lot, even with your story and understanding Connie's position in that, just hearing and saying, okay, this was a little bit different, but it was cutting edge. And so I can see that you're like, Dad, this isn't going to be like your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to say something?
I just have a question. So you've been so vulnerable, right? And I really appreciate that. I think as I'm hearing this, one of my questions as a dad, right, would be in the conversations, especially with everything going on in America right now, we always like to say we're pro-adoption, not pro-life or pro-choice. Like, was there ever a decision that you had to make as far as
keeping?
Or am I going to keep this child?
Mm-hmm. Carry the baby.
Yes.
Yes. When I shared the news with the father, that was his knee-jerk reaction. Let's go to the clinic. Mm-hmm. And I went with him. We went down there, and the lady started telling me about the process. And I was raised in a Christian home. I just, like, for me, I don't know. And I couldn't do it. Honestly, when I was just thinking about it and praying on it, all I kept coming back to was, this is a person. She's going to grow and be somebody. And what if she ends up being, a cutting edge scientist that makes serious breakthroughs in the medical field, or the next president, those opportunities, you just don't know. And I wasn't comfortable with termination.
That just gave me chills thinking about, like, that's something.
I love that too. Like, you could be carrying somebody that's amazing. I wish I could say that to every birth mother that's thinking right now and making a choice, is you could be carrying somebody, you are carrying somebody that's going to change the world.
There's so much hope in that and so much strength in your story. Just saying that. I think that's so incredible to think about how impactful that is. And I really do. I wish you could go to every single clinic and just, like, that little blurb that you just said, share with every birth mom out there, because I know I've never thought like that before, and to be able to say that
this life is valuable.
And
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So you choose adoption. I want to know, 2008, what does that look like? Do you go on the internet? Like, how did you pick an agency?
Yes.
She probably has her glue stick too.
We went on the internet. We came across the Adoption Network website, which was a nationwide network. And so I was looking at profiles from families all over America. At first, I wanted them to be in Florida because I was hoping that people would be open to meeting. And I figured if they were in Florida, it would be easier. Ultimately, that's not what happened. So she's out of state. But we get together at least once a year now. So my dream of staying connected is still
there. And you knew that was going to happen once you connected with Connie. When you looked at the profile book, what did you like about her family?
I liked that they had been married for a while. I liked that they were older and more mature, and that they looked like they had a great life. And I knew that they would be able to give her more than I could. And so I just was sort of picturing what that life would look like for her. And they just seemed very loving. And after speaking with them and just hearing it's hard to describe. It's out of this world. They're just very kind and genuine and emotional, and they're vulnerable and just so open. And I just loved that so much. So I pretty much was like, this is it. This is them.
You said that you had listened to a show that we did, and we talked about how often birth moms will pick a family that they wanted to have for their life, but they want for their child. And is that kind of what happened in that situation? Is you didn't feel like you had these things, but you wanted to give that to your baby?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Two parents who love each other, and you know, they know what they want out of life, and they're ready to, you know, just start a family and do all the things. And they did. And it was nice to watch and sort of be a part of on the sidelines a little bit.
Okay, I have to ask you a question. So you said that they had a hard time matching you because of things in your profile. What do you think those things were?
I was very honest about, so the medical
I'm a
history.
Psycho. Just kidding.
So
I know she's not. That's why I can make that joke. Yeah.
There was the medical questionnaire where they're asking, you know, on your mother's side, what, you know, and your father's side. Obviously, for my father's side, I really didn't have any information health-wise. So I just focused on my mom's side of the family. And my mom had cancer, and she died when she was 31 years old. I'm at risk. I have to get screenings every so many years, and will for the rest of my life. And so will all of my children. But there were also other things that, you know, were present. I mean, most of them I feel like were diet related. You know, there's like, you know, cholesterol, high blood pressure, stuff like that. But I was trying to be as honest as possible. And even though I was not
Did you say I like McDonald's?
Any of it.
I mean, you're 21 years old. Like, of course you like McDonald's, right?
I mean, we are just so shocked because this is like in that middle era where people were concerned about that. Like, that blows our minds because we are in a time right now where like we are seeing things like drugs, alcohol, horrible things where people are saying, yes, we say yes. So to think that somebody would be stopped because your mother had cancer or because you have high cholesterol, it's just like,
you know, not me. It wasn't me. That was the biggest thing. Like medically wise, I was totally healthy. There was nothing wrong with me.
And you had delivered 2 babies.
And that is kind of also, so that was the other piece of it. So both boys were premature. Jaden, my oldest son, was 6 weeks early. He was 4 pounds when he was born. He's very tiny, and he had to stay in the NICU for about 2 months. And then Riley was, I want to say 4 weeks early. He was almost 6 pounds, but he also had to stay in the NICU for a little bit. But they both were healthy. Like after the NICU stay, they were fine.
That's just not something that would stop people from matching you today. But I'm sure that made you feel terrible. I'm sure that made you feel like, does anybody want, I'm carrying the president. Does anybody want my baby? Like that would be an added component of grief, I feel like.
There was a point during that time where I sat down with my aunt and was expressing to her, I'm trying to tap into those feelings. I was discouraged because I told myself from the very beginning, once I decided that adoption was the route, I drilled it into my head and it stayed there. So it was a decision. It was set in stone. And I said, why is this not working out for me? Ironically, my pastor at the time told me that he didn't think that I should proceed with adoption. And that like ruffled some feathers in my hands with my aunt and my uncle, because they were kind of shocked that he said that to me. And so there was a point where I was just like, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe I need to rethink my plan, but I feel like at that point I had just told myself so many times over and over again that was the decision I made, that I decided on, and I couldn't get past it. So I just, and then I received the call about Connie and Matt wanting to connect. And then I was just like, okay, problem solved.
Yay. Well, I want to say a couple things. The fact that the pastor said maybe you should keep the baby tells me, Jessica, that you're a really good mom. That he would say, you know what, maybe you can do this, tells me that he really believed in you. And I feel like even though maybe he gave you the wrong advice, where it came from was the right place, because he had a heart to see that you were very loving and you could do it. And I do want to say that is that a lot of times we think all birth moms can't do it. It doesn't mean they can't do it if they choose adoption. It means that they just feel like this is right for them. And it's a choice that they make, a very, very loving, hard choice. And I want to say another thing. You're talking about tapping into those emotions. Anyone that comes on this show that goes back in time and taps into those emotions is very brave, because it is hard. And I say that, I know, I see you getting emotional. I say that because somebody asked me a super personal question like 3 days ago, and you can ask Noah. I answered the question totally I'm honest, but I started to tap into some of that emotion, and I spiraled a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel like, did I share too much? But you're brave. You're very brave for going back in time and remembering these things, and our community needs you. We need you to tell us what you went through. We need to understand that compassion and that heart that you have as a mother. And we also need you to tell the story about how you connected with Connie and how Connie's relationship changed you. Not only the whole adoption, but you as a person.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay. So Connie, I mean, they were kind of role models, Matt and Connie, seeing their relationship. And then when we were together during visits, I mean, just sort of watching how they function together. I feel like I was always trying to kind of take notes. So they helped me grow.
When did you meet her? Did you meet her before you delivered?
Did I? Oh.
We'll ask her. We'll ask her next episode.
Yes, I think we did. Yeah, I feel like we did, because she flew down ahead of time. Oh, that was so long ago. I did definitely meet her, but I didn't meet Matt until I was in the hospital.
Okay, that's right. Let's skip to the hospital. So you guys get matched. You meet her. You like her. We're going to bring her on. She's going to tell us all about it. She's got the timeline down. But she's excited. She's pregnant.
I know.
Wrap your head around that. She's pregnant with an adopted baby, and she's meeting her, and they're connecting. Matt is not there. How long did you guys walk through that timeline? Like, when did you meet, and then when did you deliver? Do you remember? I feel like I wrote down April.
I wish I did. I feel like we maybe met briefly before the hospital, but I honestly, it was a very long time ago. 16 years actually to the day, because today is her 16th birthday.
It is?
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
You told me that, but I didn't even plan that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
That's awesome.
I love the way that God works it all out. I love that so much, and that's so meaningful. Did you think 16 years later you would be telling your story and changing lives?
No, I didn't know. Not at all.
Let's talk about 16 years ago.
16 years ago.
So you go into labor. Oh, wait. So when Connie comes on, she's going to tell you 10 weeks earlier, she had given birth, but she had to do it C-section, right?
Yes.
10 weeks earlier?
Yes. And she is freaking out going, I need to heal.
Right.
Because I got to get to Florida. I mean, sorry, I can't wait till she comes. But so in her world, she's like got a new baby. She's trying to heal, and she's about to go to Florida for another baby.
I thought I was going into labor ahead of time. It was, I can't remember how many days or if it was a week early, and it ended up being Braxton Hicks. So they sent me home.
Okay.
So
that's false alarm.
But it was a false alarm. I did have a scheduled induction date because of the situation. I had to request that with my doctor, and they were like, we don't normally do that. We kind of let it happen. And I explained, this is an adoption. The family is coming from out of state. And they were just like, okay, this is a unique situation. We'll put you on the schedule. And after the Braxton Hicks thing, I ended up being fine. So we ended up just going to that appointment, and I was induced.
Did you know that birth dad was going to sign off?
They didn't really give him a choice.
Okay, so you didn't mention him. Like, where did he go?
Prison.
He went to prison.
Yeah, and then right? You said no communication.
I tried to call. I found out where he was, and I called, and the guy on the other end was like, it doesn't work like that. You can't just call a prisoner.
We're learning so many things. You cannot just call a prisoner.
Well, because you're just dating, right? You weren't married to him, and so they're not going to give you any right to talk to this guy. Yeah.
They gave me no information, and he wasn't released from prison until after the whole process was over. But he did contact me when he got out, and we got together once where I showed him pictures, and just kind of let him know this is what happened. Mm-hmm. And then it was kind of like now what? Because I was like, clearly it's over between us. I mean,
right. And also we're breaking up.
Yeah. In case you didn't know. But
okay, so he wasn't in the picture. Nobody was worried about him. You go to the appointment. You get induced. Was Connie there at that time?
Yes, okay. Connie was there.
Okay, because she had gone to the appointment.
And Matt too, or he hadn't come.
Matt his flight came in that day. I think he was coming from the airport while I was in labor. So
similar.
He was rushing to get to the hospital.
This is very similar to our daughter's birth mom also was induced. And so he was rushing in with the kid
at
4:00 in the morning.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And he did not burst into the room like Matt did, though. Tell that part. She meets him in the middle of giving birth.
Yeah, I was just in between, I guess, contractions.
Oh,
they had the blanket. I was up in the stirrups, and Matt showed up. And I remember just being like, nice to meet you. Here's the baby. It was a funny way to meet someone, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that's really nice of you that you allowed them in the room. That's a big gift to be in the room. Even I get the mom, but the dad, you're okay.
My birth. I was just like, I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah. So was she early?
No, because it was pretty much right at the 40-week mark. And honestly, I think it was actually a week after. I think it was 41 weeks. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to make it that far, but because the other two were so early, but she didn't want to come out.
I guess that would make sense. They wouldn't induce you if it was
early.
If she was early. Okay, so they were there, and then I got to know, did they bring their baby?
They didn't bring the baby to the hospital, but she was with them in Florida. Connie's mom came with her, and they rented a house pretty much across the street from my aunt and uncle's house. So we were close, but she was there at home with the baby during that time.
Okay, I have to know, just chatting with all of us, did you want to change your mind?
Are you considering adoption but feel overwhelmed by the process? Maybe you've already started and need some guidance. We've heard countless stories and understand adoption can be an overwhelming process. This is why we launched Adoption Now Coaching. With one-on-one coaching from April Fallon, you'll feel more confident and more informed so you can focus on what matters most, bringing your child home. Learn more at www.adoptionnowpodcast.com.
Oh, after she was born, that was hard. It didn't become real to me that it was happening until the lawyer showed up with all the paperwork. And I think that's where I just like lost it. My aunt was with me and a friend of mine from school was there. And my aunt said, you know, you can change your mind. You can. But I just kept coming back to life's already hard. This will be so much harder. And now other people are involved. And I felt like I had a connection with Connie and Matt, and I just felt like I couldn't do that to them after everything, because once we were connected, we stayed connected like to the end. So I felt like, you know, we were really a part of each other's lives a lot during that time. And I just was so convinced that I wouldn't be able to do what I needed to do for the boys. I don't know. And it sounds bad. Saying it out loud, I guess, I don't know. I just pictured myself with 3 babies in diapers and I'm just trying to get off welfare. Like,
Right.
That doesn't sound bad.
No.
I think I'm getting emotional hearing it, because I think about how much you have really shown so much bravery through all of this. And even though emotionally you were very distraught, you knew like deep down inside that this was the right thing. And I think for this now 16-year-old, you know, for her to hear that coming from her birth mom is something that, you know, they say a lot of times, especially in like closed adoption, there's a lot of fantasizing about who your birth parents were. And to me, this is better than any fantasy that anybody could come up with, right? Like to know that you sat there and made the hardest choice because of the love of your child, even though you had many different options and people were, you know, telling you these things, and even emotionally you're sitting there going, wait a minute, what am I doing? You knew from the bottom of your heart, like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is the best and the right thing for my child. That is something where that's what is so beautiful about open adoption, right? Is you have the ability now to share that story so that this child knows they're not trying to guess or try to figure something out, or why did, you know, this happen, and then they come up with some crazy idea. They know that you really did make that hard choice, and that shows so much courage and strength.
Yeah, and I think that it helped my father a little bit heal in that space, because there was a time years ago, what was it? I want to say maybe 2017 or 2016, they flew down with the girls, and we got together. They came over to our house, and I asked if it was okay if my dad could be there so that he could meet her. And they said that was fine. So my dad came over and got to meet the whole family and got to meet Madeline. And seeing him with her, I feel like it just made him realize this is not the same. This is not the same.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like after that, it kind of helped also because I was able to kind of provide the birth mom perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
She obviously loved you. So, you know, I don't know. I hope he doesn't still suffer. He's a dad. He doesn't share very much when it comes to emotional things, but, I saw it growing up. And then as an adult, feeling like I could maybe be part of that healing kind of was nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is a full circle for sure. We're excited to bring Connie on and talk about her side of being pregnant and giving birth and then going to get another baby. One of the things that I want to end this interview with that struck me is when she was about to leave Florida and you had come over, you were there, you were across the street, and you said, I'm not ready.
For them to leave. Yeah.
What were those days
wasn't.
like? Yeah. I mean, it's been all this, comforting time, and then they're going to leave and you're going to go back to parenting 2 children, but you don't have your daughter. What were those days, weeks like?
that was a dark time. I think for me, after they left, I just trying to convince myself, okay, time to get up, like wipe the dust off, keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I just sort of threw myself back into school. I threw myself into the externship, and I just tried to do anything. I was keeping myself busy and distracted so I didn't have to sit in those emotions, because it was really hard and sad and lonely and depressing. And I just remember crying a lot in my bed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What made you move forward?
Not having a choice, because I had the boys. I couldn't just be this sad, still person ignoring life going by. I had to get up. I had to finish school. I had to get a job. I had to keep them, they were in daycare at the time, but, I'd taken care of them, They have to eat. They need to be bathed. I have to go shopping. Life goes on.
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. I had to.
So you went on to finish school, get a job, and you got married, and you had a daughter.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
I mean, I think a lot of birth mothers that are listening to this, they are in those first stages of grief, and it's like they can't see the next day. And one of the things that you said is that you don't live there anymore. You used to live in that grief, but that there comes a time where you don't live there day in and day out. You don't live in that darkness, right? You still love your child. That doesn't go away, but you've moved forward, and there is hope for those that are really struggling right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to tell that to someone when they are in that dark space. If you would have told me when I was there, and my aunt told me, I remember there was a point where, when I found out I was pregnant, it was atopic. And I don't know if I said that right. But the egg fertilized in my fallopian tube. So there was a chance that I was going to have a hysterectomy. And I would have lost the baby. And I remember being so mad at myself for getting pregnant again. And when we weren't sure what was going to happen, I said something to my aunt, how I just wish that it would just be over and that I had a hysterectomy and I could just move on with my life and never have to worry about that again. And my aunt looked at me and she was like, oh my God, sorry. She said, you say that now, but in 10 years, you might be married. You might have a husband who wants a baby. And I was just like, yeah, right. That's exactly what happened. But 21-year-old me was just like, whatever, you're not here. You're not in this space with me.
Right. But you did it, and it happened for you, and it can happen for anyone as they are pursuing tomorrow. This is a hard thing to walk through, and you walk through a very, very, as Noah said, courageous and brave decision. And you got to a place where you had the very thing that you placed your child into, right? Stability. You've been married for 14 years. You got a daughter. I mean, just the whole story is just so beautiful, Jessica. And I thank you for coming on and bearing your soul and sharing with us, and so that we can understand a birth mother story.
Yeah, Jessica, it's been a pleasure having this time with you. And it's just, I am so proud of you and what you have accomplished, and even the bravery to share your story like this. And I think every time we do these, I'm blown away at how much I can learn from it and how much it helps us grow as parents. I remember we always say this, we were always told, you pray for the birth mom. That was like one of the things that I thought was such a radical idea. And the more stories that we tell and the more stories we hear, it just makes so much sense, right? Because at the end of the day, this is such a powerful part of the story. And even though you may not have listened to your aunt, you definitely heard it, right? Because you still remember it. And I think even though your story may not be something that people listen to and like they're going to say, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to do, they're going to hear it and they're going to be so impacted by it, whether it's 6 months, 6 years, 10 years. that story is something that you hold so dear, and there is such a strong motherly instinct that you have that's so clear. And I think I haven't gotten the idea of the title of the book, but it's something like Courageous Birth Mom or something like that.
Noah's going to title your book here. Hot off the press.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to bring Connie on and hear her side of the story and how you guys interact together. And we're super excited. So thank you so much. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next episode.
For nearly a decade, Adoption Now has shared inspiring adoption stories. Now, go behind the scenes, enjoy bonus content, and connect with our adoption community. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/adoptionnow. Or get one-on-one coaching at adoptionnowpodcast.com. If this episode moved you, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok. See you next episode.
At the end of the day, I choose you.